So I just got off my conversation with Ron Morehead, fascinating guy I've been following for a very long time, and a shining pillar in the Bigfoot and paranormal community. Those were the Sierra sounds that you heard. You can get those at Ron's website, ronmorehead.com, 10 in Morehead. And before we get into the interview with him, which is extremely wide-ranging and fascinating, I expected nothing less. I just want to let you know, or remind you, there are two ways to support me and my research, and there are links in the YouTube video description here. You can get my music on Bandcamp at richardturgeon.bandcamp.com, and then also you can get a Bigfoot t-shirt that I've designed and created on my creatureportal.com website. So all that said, I wanted to thank you in advance for watching. You're in for a real treat with Mr. Ron Morehead. Here we go. So I'm very excited to be here today with Ron Morehead, the author of Quantum Bigfoot and Voices in the Wilderness. This is the man who gave us the Sierra Sounds, which is a series of Bigfoot vocalizations that Ron captured at a remote camp high in the Sierra Mountains of California. He has also been in a ton of Bigfoot documentaries, including Missing 411 by David Paulides, and most recently made an appearance on Alaskan Killer Bigfoot that is on Discovery Plus. So, Ron, I wanted to thank you in advance for your time here. It's a pleasure and an honor to meet you after seeing you as such a big presence in the community and in so many documentaries. So, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's my honor to be with you. I appreciate you asking me.
So, Ron, tell viewers who might not be familiar with your presence in the community a bit about your background and how you came to be involved in this topic.
Oh boy, I'll tell this. Okay. Yeah, there was some hunters that I knew as friends, and they hunted the high Sierras of California, a special place they went to, which is 8 miles in the wilderness, about 8,400 feet in elevation. So during deer season, during the summers, they'd go up there just to look around. They had a little camp set up there. Anyway, two of the brothers, the Johnson brothers, been hunting there since 1958, really, and they had these things come around that night. Something started making a ruckus around the camp and having some really unusual vocalizations. And they're avid hunters. I got to tell you, these guys are really hunters. And they went out later and seen this huge track, and that kind of let them know that it wasn't a bear, because they knew it wasn't. The sounds weren't representative of a bear at all. They came out and told the other guys, which is his son and 2 other guys that was part of the hunting group. I was friends with them all. Well, they went back up to see what it was, just to see, and they had these things come around again, and one of the guys just got so scared, because the sounds were pretty aggressive sounding, when they first start off. They're just really aggressive. They don't know what they're going to do. They don't know. Bigfoot was not on their radar. They was not looking for Bigfoot. They just had this happen, and nobody really knows why, other than they were curious, maybe. So the one guy got scared off. He left a note for the other guys. He said, this is ridiculous. Not monsters. They thought they was doing some kind of a monster. They didn't know, what Bigfoot was or nothing. He came out, and then the wives got worried because the other guys didn't come out after him, and it was a day late. So he asked him to go back up there, but he wouldn't go by himself. So he asked me to go, and that's how I got involved. And I've been going. I went back many times. Many times I get somebody to go with me. I'd go back up there, and been going back as much as I could for years after that. And we all started taking tape recorders because they were starting to make their noises. And it wasn't until 1972, the winter of 72, when the snow load's so bad you can't get up there. And Warren Johnson, the leader of our group, he wrote Ivan Sanderson a letter, a 23-page letter saying that telling him what happened, what was going on. Well, Iver Sanderson, he thought it was probably, I didn't know all this till later when I read the correspondence, but he thought it was probably a hoax. And he sent his correspondence to Peter Byrne on the West Coast in Oregon. Peter thinking the same thing, sent it to a guy in Al Berry down in Redding, California. And Al thought he'd come down and just talk to us, see if there's anything to it, but he thought it was probably a hoax too. Again, I didn't know any of this till years later when I started reading the correspondence with him. Al let me, because anyway, we took him up there in the summer of '72, and he started experiencing the same thing. He took a tape recorder with him and started recording the creatures just like we were. And he's the one that actually fostered the sounds when we had them studied, because he's an investigative reporter, and he had a master's degree in science, so this just doesn't fall within parameters of regular science, but he had to find out if these things were real. So he sent it off to, he ended up finding, after so many laugh-offs he got from different PhDs, different places who wouldn't take him seriously. And he got Professor Curlin, the electrical engineer at the University of Wyoming, to take him on. He said, I just want to know if they're real or not. If they're not real, let me know. If they are real, let me know. And he studied them for a year and ended up saying these are real. They have not been speeded up, slowed down. They're outside, inside, and below and above the human range. And they represented an animal, the little piece that he studied there, over 8 foot tall. And so that was quite a hit, for a PhD to come forth and say these sounds are real. They haven't been dubbed. There's no 60-cycle hum, no pre-recording, re-recording. And he gave his data to Anthropology Unknown at British Columbia in 1978. It was, yeah. And that wasn't enough really to get academia to not close their eyes in their little paradigm they got going on. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't until 2008 when Scott Nelson, a cryptolinguist from the Navy, two-time graduate of the language inscription school for foreign languages in Monterey, and it's part of the DoD now, Department of Defense, and he was a two-time graduate of that, so I had him vetted very well. But he heard it by accident on the BFRO website, and he came all the way out from Missouri, where he had retired from the Navy, and he was teaching school languages there, and come out to interview us. And he convinced us that he was serious, and when I did a vetting of him, I found out he is real. So not too many people have the skills that he has. A two-time graduate, according to the letter I got back from this the guy at the school, the main teacher there. He said he's more than qualified to transcribe a language from something. So that's a big thing. I mean, to say that they have a language, because find out from Dr. Philip Lieberman at Brown University that only humans have the vocal mechanism for sapient speech like we're having right now. Mm-hmm. You put those things together, you've got something that has to be a human component to them. And I think I've established that now with my research. Actually, Dr. Lieberman was one of the first guys that Al Berry went to try to get him to look at this, because he's a professor of cognitive speech, and he passed away this last July, but he's very well thought of, and a lot of history, but so is Professor Curlin. So you get these professors behind you and with their information, and you put it together with the fact that you got a cryptolinguist saying that he was trained, by the way, this cryptolinguist, to look into sounds to see if it was a code or if it was a language. If it was a code, what's any deception in it, and deception in the language. If it's a language, is it a language? If it is, transcribe it. And he did all that with these sounds and said these things are outside the human range. Nobody can duplicate it. So that's kind of where it all goes, and all went for a long time. But there was a lot of things happened at that camp that couldn't be explained by classical science. And anybody that's read my stuff knows kind of some of the stuff we were dealing with up there. It's not just me. There was 5 of us, and it was just I wasn't there with all 5 all the time. But when I'd go up generally with another guy or two, and we'd experience these anomalies. It just didn't make sense to us at all. Mm-hmm. And I tell people like one time we thought the camp was being ripped apart out there. We had hauled in barrels for the mules and reassembled the stove and kept our food and supplies sometimes in these barrels. So that way when we wanted to walk in, we could walk in without the animals and not have to worry about carrying so much stuff and carrying it all back out. We could leave it there. And that stuff we thought was being thrown around out there, we looked out there later when all the commotion stopped and nothing changed. That's weird. I mean, nothing changed. What do you do with that? You know.
Yeah.
So Al Berry, who had a master's degree in science, he said, "Don't talk about this crazy stuff because he said no one's going to listen to you if you get off on that field there." But I do talk about it now because it happened. It's happened to a lot of people. Just strange things. These things are sentient. They have a human component to them, or we have a Bigfoot component to us. I'm not sure what, but it's how you want to look at it when you get into aliens and have they mess with the genome of primates and what's like that. And that's what I've done. I've got into that. I was raised religiously, but I'm not religious now. But we're all spiritual, whether we like it or not. We are. Energy can't die, according to quantum physics, according to Einstein, according to Stephen Hawking's. It just changes form. So if it just changes form, that means our consciousness keeps going where our body stops, you know. And what happens after that, nobody really knows, but a lot of people believe in multiple embodiments. So I'm just saying all that because I get into a lot of this stuff because I think, according to Tesla, what one man calls God, another one calls quantum physics. So, so I think they're synonymous, and I really believe that. And you get into how quantum physics works. I've been accused of pseudoscience and just woo-woo and all that stuff, but quantum science is what I'm into, and that's answers a lot of the woo-woo questions, but it isn't. They're not synonymous, you know. Quantum physics just is a science, and it does answer a lot of the stuff that people are witnessing in what they call the paranormal, and that's what I tried to explain in my book, The Quantum Bigfoot.
Yeah, great stuff. That was an excellent broad strokes view of your journey from not really knowing what you were hearing to some of the high strangeness that you experienced. And now we're in this period today where we are talking about things like quantum science and how that might relate to Bigfoot potentially. So it's been quite a journey. How many times, if this started for you in 1972, how many times have you been up to that spot and record and interact with these creatures over the years? I think it was a pretty long stretch from what I remember from the books.
Yeah, well, it started in 1971, actually, and I went up there. I didn't count the times. I was up there so much. I've been up there multiple times and over the years. It continued all the way through 76, the close-in interaction. I had things happening after that, but not close, because we did something in 76 that it was too bad we had to shoot a bear right there in camp. And so that was the last time I heard Bigfoot. No, it wasn't the last time, but it was the last time in the 70s that I heard him. And one was screaming out up behind us at the shelter, and we heard our camp being tore apart again. I thought, well, is that them again? What are they doing this time? But then you realize when I heard one of our packs rip, which was haul our food in on the mules, that was it, because those packs are, they're historical. We got them from a guy that used to take them into Yosemite in 1942. So anyway, we looked out there and it was a bear. And make a long story short, we ended up having to shoot it when it came down at us, and we tried to run it off 2 or 3 times, but it last time it didn't run off and just kept coming back. So anyway, we skinned it out the next day and we ended up eating its hindquarters, eating the thing. And that's, I wouldn't put that on anybody, because you skin one of those things out, it looks like a person.
Yeah.
Bear. It's really kind of freaky. But we did, and that's too bad. But I think that stopped the close end stuff, because maybe they didn't trust us anymore. I don't know, or maybe they weren't curious about us anymore. But when we were up there, we were thinking we were studying them, and that they were like a bear, and no big deal. But it's a big deal, and that science hasn't discovered what these things are. Just a ape in the woods out there. Something. And you mentioned earlier flesh and blood only. Well, I get into quantum physics how nothing is just flesh and blood energy, because energy just transfers. You get into Paul Dirac, who was a 1933 Nobel Prize winner for discovering antimatter, the mathematical equation for antimatter, and that was established as a fact. That's where matter and energy are interchangeable. Now that's hard for people to get their head around, but matter and energy are interchangeable. That was established really at first by Einstein, but Paul Dirac got the prize for it, and it wasn't until 2012 when CERN in Switzerland established from the Hadron Collider that does happen. They change their matter into energy. So people can say, can they disappear? I may be getting ahead of you, so just stop me if I do. If they say if they say they disappear, well, that most researchers just throw them out with the baby water. That's nothing can just disappear. But you get into what we really know, and what we know is that light, everything has a frequency. Everything's energy, frequency, and vibration. And you get into quantum physics, you realize that even Dr. Christopher Bland at West Texas A&M said that everything works through the laws of quantum physics, from the atom to the cosmos, all the way through. Everything does. We just don't see it. We only see within our three-dimensional parameters, and that's our frequency. That frequency is between 430 and 770 terahertz. You got all these other frequencies going on that we can't see. Sometimes animals can see better. Sometimes have a different vision than we do. Some of them. And you can't hear everything. We only hear within certain frequencies. We don't hear ultrasound or infrasound, but yet a dog can hear ultrasound, and animals, huge animals like elephants and tigers, they communicate in infrasound, which is below what we can hear. So we don't hear these things, but they do affect us. The infrasound especially can affect humans. So you realize that our olfactory sense is another factor there. We only smell within certain frequencies. Everything's a frequency. And you get to the olfactory sense, like a bear and a dog, how much better they can sniff things out. A dog is 7 times better than what we are. A bear is 21 times more than we can do. So you think about that, that's pretty phenomenal. I was listening to a forest ranger one time give an explanation on why you shouldn't leave food out, and because the bears will smell it for miles away if they catch the whiff of it. And they had put some cans out there, and one of the cans were different foods in the can, just as an experiment. And this one can was peaches in it, and other cans had different things in it. But the bear would always go for the can with the peaches in it. So they thought, these things can read the labels. no, that's a little bit idiotic, but they always went for the peach can because they could smell through that can.
Wow.
We can't do that. So I try to get this to people that we just don't know everything there is to know.
Yeah.
When you got to have an open mind to understand there's other things going on that we don't see or know. We only see within the third dimensional parameters, and we live in a 3D world. Yet there's all these other dimensions existing out there, and so what's going on in those? Things are going on in those, and we won't know about that until we leave this embodiment and our consciousness finds out.
Yeah. Speaking of some of the high strangeness that you encountered up there, there's a reenactment in David's movie documentary Missing 411 of some of those experiences. There was a floating beam of light. You had mentioned some clicking sounds that somehow followed you home after you were up in the camp. You heard things like a tuning fork in the middle of the forest, and I'm wondering, with all this discussion about quantum physics and these other theories that you and Simeon are talking about, can you speculate as to what those might have been? Is that the Bigfoot creatures themselves? Is that this, maybe a symptom of a relationship with UFOs or aliens? Do you have any theories as to how they might have manifested themselves in these forms?
Yeah, I do. You want to hear them?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
This is a totally safe space, so that's what this is about.
The tuning fork was the daytime, and you hear this big whoo, like a big tuning fork up above, and you look for the source of it, and you just can't find it. So you don't know what to do with that. Other than now, maybe I think it might have been a spaceship cloaking. Is that fair to say? Because I think anything can cloak, because energy and matter are interchangeable, and so that was that. What was it? Yeah, the car door slam. I thought I heard a car door slam out there.
Yeah.
We're 8 miles in the wilderness. There's no roads up there. There's not even a trail after so far. You got to just know where it's at. And What else was it you asked me? There's
Oh,
several things.
the floating beam of
Oh,
light.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was in 2016 when we was up there, and we'd set up a little tent because the shelter was taken down in 2015. It was just about to crumble down anyway, but we had the Forestry Service found out about the camp. Now, they didn't know anything about the Bigfoot stuff, I don't think, but they said, you take it down and we're going to fine you. So the guys went up there without me because I didn't want to be associated at that time because of my profile on the Bigfoot. And they took the camp down. So the shelter was what they took down, and they had to take out the barrels and different things that we'd packed in over the years. And took out 9 mule loads of stuff, you know.
Wow.
And but now the camp is still there. So we was up there. We set up tents, and that was in 2016 when we set up with one tent. My wife and I did, and I was sitting up because it was just a nice night. I had the top off the tent, and I watched this thing go floating by us, you know, and I said, you got to look at this. And we both stood up and looked at it, you know, and what do you do with that? You don't know what it is. Well, it's a form of energy because it's definitely controlled. And we watched it for several seconds till it just went out of sight. And it didn't bother us, but you don't know what it's going to do. You don't know what it's for. So it's kind of that's just the last thing that really unusual happened up there. Because 2018, when David went up there and I did a reenactment of that, which they did really well on that, by the way.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's exactly what it looked like. He had me pointing just how it went and the speed it went, and they followed it right along. So they did that well. And what is it?
Do you have any theories on that? Because we're familiar with stories of glowing orbs and red balls of light as well. Is this the same?
We've had orbs up there. We've had all that stuff going on. Sounds are just one of the things, but I really think, there is an alien component to these Bigfoot creatures. In fact, about 20% of the sightings have a Bigfoot connected to a UFO. And the first account of that in a newspaper was in 1888 at the Eureka Times when the Huffington Post found that article and posted it. How this rancher and some Native Americans saw this small moon come down and 3 crazy bears jumped out of it. Well, that's kind of a giveaway, but a lot of people are reporting, sightings of UFOs with these things. I interviewed a guy who'd been hunting for years, about probably 15 miles from where our camp is, where the crow flies. I know right where he's at, and he's a very credible worker. But him and his attorney friend have been working and hunting in this area for a long time. He's seen a Bigfoot. The same time, UFO was up with this mountain. They hovered, and he watched this stuff for about 30 minutes. And he'd been kind of harassed by Bigfoot and knew that they were around there for quite a while because he'd been hunting it for a long time. But he thought he better contact somebody. He contacted me, and I appreciated that. He gave me a report on it and all that. So, there's I think, you're going to see a lot more UFO reports. There's so many happening every day now.
Yeah.
People reporting Bigfoot more and more and more. We're encroaching more into the forest, and they're multiplying. And I do think there's because I believe in the UFOs and aliens have been on this planet for eons. I mean, eons and eons and eons, way back. And they probably mess with the genome of different species. In fact, I'm pretty sure that I think there's a lot of hybrids out there. And the primate that we call Bigfoot or Sasquatch is probably a remnant of alien intervention into the genome of a ape, great ape of some type. And I think a lot of them, over the eons of time, have crossbred with indigenous people, maybe even the troglodytes, and they've diluted down more human-like, where some of them aren't that way at all. I think what we're dealing with up there was not so human-like at all. However, there's a human component to them. Even the DNAs that's been done, classical academia has been given thumbs down because it had human DNA in the mitochondrial. Well, so they say, well, it has to be contaminated. Bam.
They're done with it at that point.
It's human contamination. So, but I got to give that a second look. I think they should too, because I think, somebody has already. A guy named Harder wrote a paper on introgression mitochondrial, where, over the eons of time, maybe the human DNA has been, of course, that would represent 23 pairs of chromosomes, like humans, like we have, instead of the 24 pair. So that means they would have to have a 23 pair in order to crossbreed. So who knows what alien did what to what what, you hear about the dog man, you hear about these different things that are being
Mothman.
seen all
Yep.
over. Yeah, and you hear about the other skunk ape down in Florida. You hear, well, what about the Skinwalker Ranch? You got all that stuff
I,
going. So there's stuff like that coming out. I mean, our government sponsored that for years. It's
mhm.
$30 million funding or something like that to that project down there. And people just have to be aware that there's so much more going on and so much more fixing to go on, I think, on this planet. For someone to think that we're the only intelligent life, I say that intelligent life with a quote.
Right.
I'm not so sure about that because I don't think we were created shortchanged with anything. I think we lost it somewhere,
Yeah.
humans. And I think high frequency beings, which I think God is plural, by the way, that's been established pretty much now. Hard for people to get their head around that one, though, because they've been trained to think that God is a singular guy up there herding sheep with a staff and going to hit you over the head with if you do something wrong. Well, not really. If you get into the Anunnaki, into the uniform texts that the Sumerians had, and you start getting those stories out of there, and they all relate all over the world to stories similar to Adam and Eve that we have here. And so there were giants then, and so there's giants now.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot going on, and it behoove people to look into it deeper, because if you're just going to take what you were taught, understand this: most of what you were taught is not true.
Right.
It's a shame. But I mean, I was taught a lot of stuff when I was younger, but if I didn't have an open mind, didn't see the stuff that I've seen now in Peru and Bolivia and all over the world, I'm not sure where I'd be with it, but I think I'm supposed to see all that stuff so I can talk to you today, about it.
Yeah.
And it's really been exciting, I've got to tell you. I've been doing this for over 50 years now, and me and the other researchers all over, we have our little differences on what they think they are, because some think they're really competent. Well, maybe they are, but maybe some of them aren't.
Right. Right.
Because what has happened, the Patterson track and the Willow Creek up there, it's more human-like. It's got little toes slope like that. It's got a little arch in its foot, and you get our tracks, and they're splayed. Hardly tell a right from a left foot. You can, but you got to look close to see where that little bit of arch is. They got the 5 big toes up there, and they are huge. And those are the same tracks we've been seeing for years up there. You see those tracks. So, I think the Patterson movie, I do believe that movie's real, by the way.
Same. I've been to that spot.
Yeah, I've been there 4 times on filming and things like that. But I went there with Peter Byrne, who was actually there right after the Patterson sighting, and he showed me where things were at the time, because it's changed now with the floods and stuff. But it's an interesting area, and I know Bob fairly well. Bob Goodwin, and I've been with him a few times. Anyway, it's a real Bigfoot in that film, I believe.
Yeah.
But I think it's one that's been diluted down from inbreeding or crossbreeding with indigenous people. And that goes into native lore. Native mythology talks about them taking their women.
Yeah.
And, it's a lot. And you take that into, which means they crossbreed, which means they would not, not all of them are the same.
Yeah.
But
I buy into that theory as well. I believe the film is legitimate myself, and I agree with everything that you're saying. There's a lot of discrepancies between eyewitness accounts, and we hear descriptions like what you see in the Patterson-Gimlin film, which looks more humanoid, if you will, even though it's over 6 feet tall. It's got these more rounded footprints and more conventionally human-looking footprints. Certainly not anatomy, but then you have plenty of eyewitness descriptions that describe, 8 to 12 feet tall creatures with very broad shoulders, no neck, and smaller heads and very long arms. And so there's a wide range of physical descriptions. And to your point, they're not all the same. And plus that area is, that is Native American reservation and land, that Hoopa area. Not necessarily Six Rivers National Forest, but that's that was once settled, and populated by all Native American population, just like the rest of the country. So who knows, how that came about, or
right,
what Patty was exactly, or
well, there are reports of those things being up to 15 feet tall.
Yeah.
And you got the Kandahar giant over in Iraq, I was. I don't know if you've heard about that or not, but he was supposed to be. Oh, you haven't?
No.
Kandahar giant, yeah. The group of military guys went out and they didn't come back. Another group went looking for them. They see all these bones and stuff left over from that group. Then this thing came out of a cave and started screaming at them and killed one of the guys. And this was all vetted by L.A. Missoula, who actually interviewed some of the guys that were there. So he's pretty good at L.A. As far as vetting people before he puts it out. And so I saw that documentary, and this thing was 15. Another guy that was there said it was 17, actually 17 foot tall. But they sent in the military to pick it up, and it just disappears like everything else does. See, here's the thing with the government. If it can't control something, it won't let it out, or it'll cover it up somehow, and that's just proven by if you get way into Roswell. That was not a weather balloon, was it? For all those years they tried to cover that up and say, oh, it wasn't real, it wasn't a weather balloon, but no, it was. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot coming out of the woodwork now. A lot of whistleblowers are coming forth, and there's a lot we're able to see too. My theories are just falling right in with everybody's, and these guys are coming out because there's been aliens here. They're supposedly here now, and the military knows about it, the government knows about it, but they can't control it. Just like the Tic Tac video, we don't have the technology to do what we're seeing that these things do. But the bigger question is who's flying them?
Right.
That's what.
Why are they here?
Well, I think my folks were my religious upbringing because I got the scriptures. Even Christ said, as it was in the days of Noah, so should also be in the second coming. We're in the second coming now, because I believe because the days of Noah is when we had the big flood, and the big flood was brought about because of the corruption between the human genome was being corrupted by the fallen angels, which I call aliens. And you get that in, and you've got these Nephilim giants, which were here, and they were destroying everything. So that's why this cataclysm happened. And there's evidence of that all over the world, and there's stories about that all over. And I've been pretty much all over the world seeing evidence of this stuff. And so, as it was in the days of Noah, so I had started looking back what it was like, and it's like that now. So we're in this. I think that's what the 2012 Mayan calendar was all about. It was a time of enlightenment where we're all going to start seeing the purple wand of enlightenment if we're not careful.
Right. Interesting. So we've covered the sounds, and for anybody who's interested in Ron's books and wants to get the sounds of these sounds that we're talking about, which are on CDs, they're available at his website, ronmorehead.com. Is that correct? They're still...
Yeah, Morehead. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And they're downloadable too if people don't want to buy the hard copy of the books. Yeah. They're shipped out through Amazon, but I don't stock them here. I get requests every once in a while for people who want me to autograph a book and send it to them. I don't have them here. So I do have them at these conferences when I talk, and that's where I sign books, because I order them and send them to those places.
Great. Yeah, I would love an autograph. I got my copies on Kindle, so I'm taken care of there. Those are some great books. I just wanted our viewers to know where to get those. So we've been skipping ahead from the more down to earth, the sounds, talking about the sounds and some of the high strangeness that you've experienced. And like I said, I'll set up some of those sounds at the beginning. Before we get into the more paranormal aspects that we've already touched on, I was wondering if you could set up the samurai chatter, as you call it, that sound, and speculate as to what they might have been talking about, or do you have any thoughts about what they might have been saying or what their intention was? It sounds to me like they're arguing over something.
I wish I knew. The crypto. This happened in 1974 when just my friend Bill and I had packed some supplies in, and they were already there at the camp when we got there. We didn't see them, but we knew they were around because of the track we saw on the trail coming in, and then the rock pounding when it started getting about dusk time. He was unpacking saddlebags while I was fixing a fire for the stove and for the food. And we heard this going on, and we were, okay, they're here. And then you're hearing the whoops back and forth, and I think the whoops, different intonations are telling, they got a code going on, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear that stuff, and okay, we learned just leave it alone. Don't mess with it. Just leave it alone and just keep doing what you're doing, and maybe they're coming closer. Well, they did. They start coming closer, and the first thing you know, they're within, just 50, 60 yards from us, and making it. And what we had was the samurai cry was up over here to my right, and right then I seen this thing, real rapid, shooting down. That's the first time I saw one, 1974. And we should have seen them more often, but we didn't. And I think I know the reason why now. But my daughter has seen them 3 times. Her and I've been up there. But anyway, I seen this going down to where the other 2 were. Where the other 2, I believe, was an adolescent and a mother, because we heard the small voice, which I got recorded, and the big voice coming down on it, like,
right.
And, I think the young ones just getting a little bold. I think they do that, but I think the young ones have to learn what humans are all about, and they have to learn what they really can do in this world, because they're doing some strange things, and I've had a lot of strange reports given to me over the years. And, well, anyway.
What do you think? Speaking of their activity, including staying concealed, what do you think their relationship with humans is? Is it benevolent or hostile? And this is kind of an open-ended question. Your party was a hunting party, but you didn't intend to shoot one of these creatures once you started to encounter them, and you even mentioned that they gifted you pine cones. So I guess it's a 2-part question. Do you think they can sense intention? And then the second part is, what do you think their relationship to humans is? Is it hostile, benevolent, observer, we're in the way,
Well, they're not all the same.
Right.
It depends on who created them and what their intentions are. Are they warring or are they peaceful? Like what we're dealing with up there, I guess was peaceful, because we didn't get ate or nothing. Nothing carried us away or anything like that. As far as the what was I going to say there? No, what we didn't know, but at the beginning, if they were hostile or not, because we always had guns, still do. I wouldn't go up there without a gun, just because, not because I think I'm going to shoot one, but because you need protection from other elements.
Yeah.
Not just bears, but I got a headband made out of a 52-inch rattlesnake. So there's other things can get you, and the bears, I used to keep a couple bird shot in the first 2 chambers of my pistol, and I would get a bear off our food if they come in, and the sound alone would usually scare them off. But, so their intentions depends on what created them and what kind of DNA change they did to the genome. And I think they were interacting with us, me mainly. I don't know what they were trying to say. I wish I did. I've asked that question for years, and I heard a lot of people say, "Oh, I know what they were saying to you," and all of them tell me something different. So how do you know what to believe?
Right.
Yeah. But they were trying to tell me, and you can tell by the inflection when you hear my CDs and my tapes, that it's a definite question. And it's not aggressive. It's not like they're trying to beat on their chest this time. Now they're really trying to say something to me, and it's different than the ones when we first encountered. The sounds we first encountered were extremely aggressive, and I don't know. I just don't know, and I wish I did, and maybe someday I will. Well, I will someday when things change. When I change
this all
forms.
comes out.
When I change forms.
When you change forms, right. I'm sure we'll find out.
Or maybe before then. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's been an exciting time. I've been all over. I spoke at the Darwin Museum in Moscow. I had dinner with a senator in Moscow, me and a couple other professors, and then we were flown over into Siberia, where we met up with the shore people who took us into the wilderness there, and where they'd been seeing what they call the wild man, and it was a Bigfoot-like creature that took us way back in the wilderness in this big RV, or hardcore, I guess they call it, where the tires are as tall as I am, through rivers and everything like that. It took us to this huge cave where they said that some people had seen wild man go into that cave. So we went in there. I found a track. It was, but when someone takes you to something like that, you don't know, because there's a lot of camera people with us. You just don't know, not 100% that it was not placed by somebody.
Right.
So you couldn't say with all 100% accuracy that it was what they said it was. Just because they took us there, and it was a big PR thing. 'Cause what we did there was on the Moscow news when we got back. And, just, but my big eye opener, I think, was in Bolivia and Peru. I was chasing the elongated skulls down there to see if there was anything to do with the sagittal crest that people see on Bigfoot up here. And yeah, there was a crumb trail of the Incas warring with the Aztecs and the Mayans in Central America. Then there's a crumb trail of them warring with giants in the north, which took me into the Lovelock Caves in Lovelock, Nevada, where the Paiutes said they were warring with cannibalistic giants. And then also we got in the Minaret Skulls, which was found by Dr. Dipp in the Minarets of Sierra Nevada Mountains. I went back there on an expedition one time with Al Berry and another guy, and we took horses in there and stayed there for a long time trying to dig around, see if we could find any more artifacts that might have related to that skull that Dr. Denton found. Who, by the way, he sent that off to UCLA because he thought this was pretty significant. It's a human-type skull, but it's huge. Well, it's not there anymore.
Wow.
If things get
disappeared.
If they can't explain it, they're going to have it disappear.
Yeah.
Don't want questions raised about it. And then you got the Martindale mummies, which was found in Yosemite, actually. And that was 1898, I think it was. There's a lot of history about giants in this continent if they just let it out. But a guy named Jim Ferreira, who I met years ago at a conference, he had so much stuff on there. So you need to write a book about all this, because he's got the truth, the paper clippings and all that stuff of these giants that have been found up here, different anomalies, just right here in North America. Of course, that takes me all the way into Canada and Alaska. A lot of reports in Canada, and there's a lot of, I just was up there last year with the Discovery Channel on that.
Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, yeah.
Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, yeah. That was fun. I don't think I'll do another episode or not. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
They asked me if I'd go back if they did. I said, yes, I will. I like the helicopter rides, I got the
Beautiful country, if anything. And it just in having watched the show this past week, I've seen your episode, like we talked about before we started recording. It's a great show. There's definitely something going on out there, unless the entire show is staged. And I don't believe that
it was.
That's what's going on. Yeah. So
I know those guys. So I think they're real. They're truly authentic. And when they go out and find something on their own, they go back, hey, look what we found, and they take the camera crew out there and they say, okay, act excited again.
Yeah.
Said, how do you do that?
Well, I can say that some of the things that have happened to those guys and the reactions that they have, they must be Oscar-winning actors, because that one survivalist, Ash, looked absolutely terrified after his experience going out at night by himself, which I wouldn't advise. I don't think you would either, but he looked shaken to the core.
He was.
So it's a pretty hardcore show, and if you are a believer, which you are, it sounds to me like they are not wanted there, so we'll see where that all goes and what happens with Fort Rock.
Yeah, my suggestion to them was pretty simple. When I flew over it, I realized they'd been timbering it a lot in the past. The trees are growing up now, but there was some old growth that was still there. And they timbered it a lot. The pictures I saw, they were really overfishing it. I mean, a lot of fish there. Yeah. And they were also mining the area. So I think maybe they were encroaching a little bit too much into this territory. And I got to tell you, if a 15-foot tall monster like Bigfoot thing come out screaming at them for that, chances are they'd shot at it.
Yeah.
That would have kind of pissed it off, probably.
Right.
And who knows what really happened? No one's around to really tell us now, because either they got killed or they've died from old age. So I don't know. My suggestion was just appreciate the land, honor the land, and don't take more than you should, and don't encroach too much into areas where you're having trouble. And I think that's the trouble. A lot of timbering nowadays. So there's a lot of reports I've noticed over the years that these things are seen around where they're timbering.
like the Bluff Creek incident. That's how that all started. Jerry Crew and the construction crew were
yeah,
logging up there
yeah.
with
And I
all
got a
those
call from
equipment.
a Native American when I was living in Washington. He said, "Hey, you got to come back up here," because I'd spoke to him about Bigfoot here, which is unusual, get invited by a Native American's tribe to talk.
Right.
And he said, "We're here to scream, and it's up here." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, we're just clearing some area, cutting trees
Mm.
for some more housing." And I thought, well, there you go. Yeah. There's something about trees and these things that I've talked to so many people that have. I've even talked to some people who says they've seen them cloak and go in and out of trees,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen some pretty good evidence of that. In a picture I saw one time, a guy showed me. He wouldn't show it to anybody else, but I saw it. He didn't even know he had this until he was viewing his camera later. But he'd been back where him and his son had been having a activity quite a bit. So on the way back, his son's driving. He was just filming out the side of the car, and he goes by, and later on, he's looking at this thing, and then he showed me this part. This head comes out from behind this tree just like that, looks right at him, and goes right back in just like that. And the head represented something that had to be huge.
Yeah.
Yet the tree was only this big around.
Right. Right. How
So
does
you
that
got to
work?
wonder.
Right?
Well, it works because of energy and matter transferring.
Yeah.
I think. And I've talked to a couple of people who said that they know this for a fact. And the Native American lore says that they live in two worlds and they live in
Mm-hmm.
trees. So I suggest one guy, I got stories all over the place about these trees, and I just think people should be more careful about that stuff.
Yeah.
They don't like what we're doing to the land. We're kind of destroying the land, and in fact, the wars and the bad stuff we got going on is just it's just bothering aliens because they think we're going to push the wrong button or something. Somebody is, and
Right.
they want this planet. That's where I get into. I think they don't want to see us destroy it. And I think when we get too close to doing that, they're probably going to intervene,
Yeah.
and that's okay with me.
Yeah, and we've heard stories of them interfering with things like nuclear test sites and whatnot,
Yeah.
just outright shutting them down. I guess my question, in having studied not just Bigfoot but also UFOs, is why all the secrecy? Why don't they just come out and tell us their intentions and start that relationship or take over the planet? Or
Well, they're
that's kind of the big
not.
question, right? I hope that doesn't sound naive.
Well,
You know,
it's a simple answer. We're here for the experience, and they shouldn't interfere with our experience because that's the only thing that's going to get us to evolve. And they can't evolve any further than wherever they are, whatever dimension they're in, the fifth or sixth, probably the fifth. And they won't evolve unless they can get in this three-dimensional environment. Then they can evolve. I think that's the reason for the hybridization programs too that they got going on, because they want to evolve on this planet. We are the chosen people. We are so privileged to be human. We've been given dominion on this planet. Nothing's supposed to interfere with our decisions, because that's what's going to get you to advance. When you start responding to your decisions in a positive way, don't become a victim for anything, because somewhere along the line you needed that.
yeah,
And you got a question, oh, I didn't need that. Well, yeah, how you respond to it's very important. Learning to respond to all that stuff with love and compassion is the goal. And if we can all learn to do that all throughout life, we'll be a much better world. And we can do that if we just start learning that's important. It's important for you. You don't get sick anymore either. I mean, you just flow through life. It's just a better way to be. And I wish I could get that word out to everybody, because if you respond to things with love and compassion, you're going to be a much better person. You're going to raise your personal vibrational frequency, so negative things will come into it. Don't even associate with negative things. Get away from it. And I get off on that. It's Sunday though, right? I can talk.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, we're in church. We
Yeah, let me
church
take up an
here.
offering. Let me take up an offering.
Peace be with you. No, but I appreciate that spiritual side to your writings and your philosophy and outlook on this whole phenomenon, and that's part of, I think, what makes you an interesting figure in the community as well. Is that you're making that you're bringing out that component to it, and who knows what sort of relationship any interdimensional beings or interactions they might be having with where we go, right, and other celestial entities. I don't have any sort of theories or answers to that, but there's clearly some sort of other side that we're not a part of as
Yes.
physical beings. And so what's going on this other side, right? Who
Well,
knows?
there's more to us than just physical being. Just
That's
like
right.
there's more to Bigfoot than just a physical being. So
Yeah.
I think we're in for some really interesting times in the near future,
Yeah.
the way things are going. But we just got to save this planet. This planet has its own vibrational frequency. It's called the human residence, and it's just important that we learn. I get into that in your sleep conscious, how you have different visions, and it might be a dream, it might be a vision. There's a difference, and your personal vibrational frequency will tune more into the earth when you're in the right environment, in the right condition, in the alpha state of awareness. And I got that in my quantum book too, I think, 'cause it kind of matches up with the Schumann resonance, which has been established at 7.83, I think it is. That's changing a little bit too. It's going to, we just, gosh, I hope nobody shoots a bullet off so far in the wrong spots,
Yeah. Yeah.
If that button gets pushed, we're all in for a big UFO.
Yeah.
Which is okay. It's okay. It's all right.
Yes.
It's what happened.
So, go ahead.
No, it's just what happened. I already said that in the days before the flood.
Yeah. So to shift gears in the last portion of our conversation, I had mentioned I had watched an interview with between you and Simeon Hine, author of Dark Matter Monsters, another great book that really unpacks some of these theories about quantum physics and energy. You seem to agree that empty space, dark matter, is not actually empty. Everything observed in terms of normal matter adds up to less than 5% of the universe. And in this interview and this exchange between the two of you, I thought you put it, some of Simeon's science is very over my head. I was tracking along as well as I could, but you put it very simply. These beings have an ability to turn matter into energy. And hopefully I'm paraphrasing that correctly, but that's been what this conversation is about. And, that explains potentially some of these phenomenon like telepathy, Bigfoot disappearing into thin air that we've heard many eyewitness accounts about, walking in and out of portals. And I'm wondering, where do you see the research going? Do you feel like the wider community will start to abandon this flesh and blood theory in favor of some of the newer ideas around quantum physics that explain, Bigfoot's unique abilities and the relationship to other paranormal phenomenon? We've covered UFOs, Skywalker Ranch, and all these other things.
I think it's becoming more and more that way every day. I mean, I've been on several of these programs just recently, and we get into this, and a lot of people are asked. It answers these questions that people have had, more where people are experiencing them. So we're here for the experience, and what we do about it is personal, and we just have to do what we think is right. Everybody has to respond to their own set of issues that they come across, and I just want to get the word out to what I think is right and what I think I'm on target with, because it fits, and it fits with what happened to me and these other guys up there. That's what's interesting to me. These other guys, some of them aren't even alive anymore, but that was with the camp. No one's even wanted to talk to them, to get some corroborative whatever if this was going on. And I've asked them, would you be interested in an interview? And they said, yeah, but no one's willing to go where they're at and do it.
Yeah.
They don't see any upside to it because they just don't. They let me carry the torch for them, but it's just been an interesting trip for me. In that what I have is phenomenal, I think, and it's science. And why can't these other scientists get out of their parameters? They're all trained in Newtonian physics, which is a three-dimensional world what we live in, and everything has a measurement and predictable and material or physical. But quantum physics is not that way. It's all mathematically established, and yet the whole universe works on those laws. So why don't you get into that law and understand it instead of writing these people off that say one disappeared when you don't know how that could happen? Well, it can happen.
Yeah,
it does
and
happen
it did.
because and I think that's how the masters did their miracles back in the old days, is through the laws of quantum physics, because they said we can do the same thing. So you get in telepathy and those things like that. We have more evolving to go, more consciousness to graduate. And where it's going to go, I think, is learning more about what your consciousness is all about, and how we're all going to lose this body one day and then just go somewhere else. something else going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm not sure what it is, but I got my theories on that too. The fourth dimension of time.
Mm-hmm.
Once you go out of this embodiment, you're into that fourth dimension, and that's why people are seeing ghosts, because these things, they're waiting for the right thing to go. They have to respond to stuff. They have to correct their karma. You know, balance in your karma. Get your pineal gland in coherence with your heart. Your heart has its own brain. It's got to be in coherence with this brain up here.
Mm-hmm.
And this brain up here is going to lead your body to where it's going to go. And if your heart is telling us your gut feeling. So if you get a gut feeling, you should go over there instead of over there. I don't care if there's $1 million sitting over there. You ought to go where your gut feeling tells you to go, in my opinion. So this is all, I think, good stuff.
Yeah,
or I
good
wouldn't be
life
doing
guidance as well.
I wouldn't be doing it, you know, if it wasn't. But I just like to see all this happen in my lifetime, if possible. And you know, this happened to me when it started when I was 29 years old in 1971. So I'm getting up there, but I'm still doing this. You know, I'm speaking in Florida here next year, and a couple other places I've already booked in. But if people can hear my whole program, you know, I got pictures, I got all kinds of things that I think would be. It's very compelling, you know, when I speak at these places. The information I give out. Well, some people sit out there with arms crossed. They're not going a bit away on what they were, what their paradigm told them and what they were trained to believe.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
The veil, I think, though, is being lifted, you know, more and more people about what might be going on. So I was hoping we could end on a question which this conversation has led naturally to, it seems like. But how do you see mainstream acceptance happening, or full disclosure, whatever you want to call it, more widespread acceptance from institutions like the government, the media, science, academia? Do you see that happening incrementally?
Yes,
or through
happening.
Some big event, or like finding a body, a Bigfoot body, or a new Patterson Gimlin film, or
It's
contact?
happening. Yeah, it's happening now. The government's revealing things now.
Mm-hmm.
They know about Bigfoot. I have no doubt about that. It's just that they don't know how to control it, because it has these abilities that they can't tell us about. It's going to freak everybody out if all this stuff happened at once. They only release what they think we can handle. And that's pretty much the way it goes. Because if it was to release everything, everybody panic, and just wouldn't live a normal life anymore. If these things were out there, and they are out there, but they're out of our. They're not going to interfere with us. They interfered with us. Me, I don't really know to this day exactly why, unless I could get out and do what I'm doing now with this stuff. You know, where it's taken me, and warn people that there's good ones, there's bad ones. So whatever you do, if you run into these things, keep your guard up until you know. But if you get everything in coherence, your heart and your brain, your pineal gland, you get all those things in coherence with each other, you're going to know what to do, and it's going to be the right thing.
Awesome. Well, Ron, this has been an amazing conversation. And again, I just wanted to thank you for taking time after the Thanksgiving holiday and on your Sunday. I have to sit back and absorb some of what we talked about, but fortunately I was prepared for some of this by reading your books and, you know, by my own research. But I still think your ideas are fascinating, and just happy to have you out there speaking freely about them, and not worrying about, you know, skepticism and whatnot, and keeping an open mind to some of these possibilities that you've experienced yourself. So thank you again.
Thank you. It's just the difference between me and some of the other people. I've experienced it all. So people have to just believe it or not believe it. I care. I like for them to believe it, but it's up to them. Everybody has a choice. That's the thing about this life. We all have choices. They'll never be taken away from us.
Well, I will choose to see you if you ever visit California again at a conference or anything like that. I'd love to come see you.
I was out there on a couple of filmings here recently, and then I went to Arizona 2 weeks ago, I guess it was. I was in Arizona for the UFO connection with David Paulides. And there's a lot going on, and his release of that film is going to be in December of this year, so it's something to watch.
Awesome. Yeah, I've got all of his books in my bookshelf back here. He's a very interesting character and a neighbor of sorts.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.